Hey guys, look here. Today I'd like to do a quick knife overview of possibly my highest end tactical folder, if you want to bracket it as that, and it's the Microtech Socom Elite. This one I got in the Tanto, mainly because it was the only one that was still available. Good luck trying to find a clip point variation that's not in the secondary market. So yeah, this is my Microtech. It was made in March of 2012, so it's a few years old, and it's actually, as far as I know, one of the last production runs of the Microtech Socom Elite before it changed to the Socom Delta. As you can see as well, carbon fibre inlays in this particular model, and we're given S35 VN for blade steel. Great blade steel. Now, let's just get into some size and general specifications of this knife. You are looking at a 4-inch blade with a 3 3/4 inch cutting edge and a hair over 9 inches overall. So you've got a pretty good handle to blade ratio. There you can see quite a lot of the knife is used into the handle. So it's got pretty efficient handle to blade ratio there. Just to have some comparisons between knives similar in this category that is probably a wee bit more accessible. Keep in mind this is a very high-end knife, well, a high-end production knife. Here is the zero tolerance, 0561. If I move that to the edge of the frame just so you can see, including the glass breaker there. Its overall size very similar, but you are getting a larger blade on the Microtech. And if I move that pivot to pivot, that looks about right to me, but there you can see slightly different and slightly larger blade. Getting rid of that, and here is a Spyderco Paramilitary 2. If I bring that to the edge of the frame, as with the Socom Delta, there you can see that it is a much larger knife over the Paramilitary 2. So get that out of the way. So we'll just talk about some of the materials used here. They do use, as I said, S35 VN on the blade, but in the Socom Elite they did use a vast range of steels, S30V, and I know they did use Duratec 20CV, and that's actually a very collectible knife at the moment, from what I know, which really is not a lot, but going from there, I will just skip over the fact I don't know anything. They do use, I believe, 7000 series aluminium. That's been machined out, very beautifully machined and then anodized. And that anodization does wear very well. Hopefully the camera will pick it up, but this knife has been carried quite a lot, and there is some wear marks on it, as you can see, but it's held up very well. The carbon fibre inlays are beautiful, very nicely polished inlays. They add no tactility to them, it's very slick, but in a handhold, in like a saber grip, the jimping on the thumb ramp and in this finger troil by the lock bar, it does lock in the hand very well, so the carbon fibre is not a problem there. Another Socom Elite that I did have was a chisel ground Tanto, and it had the TrackTech inserts. And I must say they were much grippier, but this is a much more aesthetic inlay, and it's nice to have a bit more of a aesthetical side to a higher end knife. Something that Microtech does that I personally love is their custom hardware. It does add a completely different level to the knife. It really adds a custom touch to an otherwise very production simple knife. If you look at the zero tolerance, you can see that it's very basic, simple Torx screws here, so it's nice to have something a little more custom in a production knife. This is also shown on everything that they do, even the DOC. There you can see their tri-wing screws. It's just, it does add that extra level of like a custom class to it. The thumb studs in this knife, they're great. They're terraced beautifully. There's no occlusions coming down from the handle down to the thumb stud itself, so it's easy to get to, and it fires out very fast. Those thumb studs acting as the blade stops for the open position. This is the little thing that actually annoys me, the fact that the Socom Elite is actually one of the last models that Microtech made that didn't have a steel subframe around the pivot that you would find in the likes of the DOC here. So the steel thumb studs come in contact with aluminium rather than steel, but as you can see, the wear is near enough undetectable on this. It's very, very faint, which it just shows that it is a very high quality knife. But I would like to have seen a steel subframe in here, just so that wear is not excessive. Another thing I wanted to say about with thumb studs is the speed. It's very, very fast and extremely smooth. There you can see it just drops underneath its own weight, and if I just depress the lock, it just falls. It's a beautifully smooth knife. It actually has captured bearings in the pivot, so it's just a washer with ball bearings inside it, and extremely smooth, and it just falls beautifully. It's one of the smoother knives, not the smoothest knife I've got, but it's right up there, and it just works very well. Just a touch on quality here. If you look at the lock face, well, the tang on the knife where the lock engages, it's finished the exact same as the spine of the knife itself. It's that sort of bead blasted type look, but it is finished very well. And if I compare that to the zero tolerance, it's not just as refined on the zero tolerance. So there's just another note to a different level of a knife between the likes of a Microtech and most other production knives that are out there. With it coming out so fast, you probably would think that the pivot is very loose, that there's probably quite a considerable amount of blade play, but there really isn't. This knife is like a bank vault. This is actually more stable than my Hold Steel Voyager, which is probably one of my strongest and best locking up knives, but there's no side to side, no up and down at all. But a way that some manufacturers could sort of cheat that is with having the lock engaged. It's sort of like masks some problems. So even with the lock disengaged, there is no side to side play at all. But I actually removed the pivot from this particular knife, and even without the pivot in, it just locks up perfectly. It just fits in between the handles very well, with the washers doing its job very well and supporting the blade tang inside the handle. The overall design is very beautiful. Some people might say that because it comes down very thin here at the rear of the knife, that it sometimes feels as though the knife would just slip out of your hand. But personally, with the milled in jimping here at the rear of the knife, I personally feel very secure in here, and I don't feel as if the knife would come out of my hand very abruptly. There you can also see that we are given a lanyard hole. Personally, I'm never going to put a lanyard on this because it carries tip down. I can't really see the appeal of having a lanyard on a tip down knife. And also we're given a glass breaker. Never had to use it, thank goodness, but at least it's there if I ever do need it. But yeah, it carries tip down, and we may as well have a quick look at the clip. It's a very basic spring clip, very strong I must say, and again attached with Microtech's custom hardware there. There you can see the other side of the pivot. These screws actually are more reminiscent of the screws used on the Ultratech they're raised in like a, if I can get it to focus, they're sort of raised in a more cone-like shape rather than having these more flush fitting screws on the body of the knife. But it's not repositionable at all. It doesn't go tip up, tip down, or left to right hand carry, so it's something left-handed people will have to live with. Or if you are someone that really hates tip down, it's something that you're either not going to deal with because you just not get the knife, or you'll just have to learn to live with. The machined aluminium handle is beautiful. It actually is made out of two separate pieces of aluminium that's then held together with, of course, their custom screws. But the way it's machined, it gives a nice pass-through design, easy to clean out, and there you can probably see some pocket lint and general gunk and debris. There you can see the liner lock. If I just flick that out, that's the lock. Very, very strong liner lock here. There you can see that's where the lock bar stops, right there. But it's a very strong knife. I've used this knife a lot. This Tanto's actually makes it very good for everyday tasks because it's more of an elongated Tanto, and we also have a wee bit of belly along the midsection here. A little pet peeve that I have with Microtech with their production knives is this. They do plaster their knives with a lot of etchings and information. Now, a lot of people like this, and yeah, I understand you like to know as much about your knife to make it as individual as possible, with the date it was manufactured and a serial number, blade steel, all that, and then of course the brand name itself. But with a knife that is this, well, it's just a cool knife. I wish they would have thought of a more elegant way to have that information on the knife. Like all this space here, they could have milled it inside the frame, so it was there, the information was there for the person if they really wanted that information, but yet it didn't take away from the grinds on the knife. Here you can see that my one is actually their satin, which you actually get two different sorts of satin here. On the grinds we've got this like a very fine belt satin from the grinds, beautifully done. There's your Tanto, and then on the flats it's more like a surface grind along the flats here. Again, beautiful. If I turn it over to the lock side, you can see the differences here in the grinds. This is something that Microtech just do very well, even on my other Microtech here, the DOC. Their satin here is beautiful, and you can see the way that they do their grinds, and the fact that they do grind their knives very beautifully. There you can see the flat satin, the belt, the surface grind satin there on the flats, and then the belt satin on the grinds. But yeah, overall, this is a beautiful knife. It's something that I personally wanted. It was my first high-end production knife, if I would class it as that. Well, a higher-end production knife. Unlike moving away from the likes of Cold Steel and Spyderco, it really does kick it up a level into the Microtech world. But yeah, beautiful knife, really great quality. Overall, it's a fantastic product, and Tony just puts a really great knife together, and the guys at Microtech in Florida just really knows how to put a knife together, a really high quality, high end knife. But anyway, thanks for watching, be safe, God bless, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.